Hello, everyone. Welcome to GE2 Purposive Communication. And in this video, we will talk about Chapter 4, and that is varieties and registers of spoken and written language. For the information of everyone, there are two parts of this video. Since Chapter 4 will discuss varieties and at the same time registers of spoken and written language. For the first part, which is this video, we will going to discuss registers of spoken and written language. So to understand better about the varieties and registers of spoken and written language, there are following terms that we will going to use and we will going to encounter. And this will give you ideas about the important things that you really need to know as you go along and as you get engaged yourself in this chapter. So let's start our discussion with chapter 4. So before jumping into the discussion proper of chapter 4, which is the register of spoken and written language, let's have first define what is this language. So basically, to you guys who are watching right now, we have different definition about language. And perhaps one of you would say that if we say language, it is the system of communication. Again, maybe one of you would say, if we say language, it is the system of communication used by a particular country or community. And that is true. So this time we will talk about language, and we will connect language or system of communication into register. And we will going to discuss language register. So language register means the appropriateness of the level and style of speaking and writing. Therefore, if we say language register, it has something to do with how this system of communication are being used in a particular context, and that is register. And at the same time, language register will guide a speaker or writer in the use of these three things. We have vocabulary, structure, and grammar. So as we go along with our discussion, we will going to encounter different terminologies that would somehow your first time to hear. Just take a note of it because it is very essential and very substantial if you are learning English. So as part of the discussion of language register, let's consider these two pictures. So in the first picture, if you could notice, we have three persons involved. And as being mentioned to your brother, so let's assume that you are speaking to your brother. So someone would say, "What's up? It's awesome that you came to visit." So we can create a scenario that one of these person visited the house of his brother. Maybe perhaps we could say this man in red coat visited the place of his brothers. And one of his brothers said, "What's up, brother? It's awesome that you came to visit." Okay, so let's consider the second one before we will go into evaluate what these pictures trying to imply to language register. If you can notice, we have also two persons here, the one with red tie and the one with blue tie. So to the president, so perhaps we can create a scenario that these two persons are in politics. So if someone would say, talking to a president, he would say, "Good morning, Mr. President. We appreciate your visit." So try to notice that two scenarios that we have. So we are talking to your brother. The second one is you are talking to your president. Perhaps you have thoughts in mind, and yes, that is correct. These two pictures imply the tone or somehow the style of speaking. And this picture has something to do with language register. As being mentioned earlier, it is the appropriateness of the level. So on the first picture, we could say that the words being used are casual because they are brothers. In short, they are using the informal language in talking with each other. Well, on the other hand, the sounds is formal because you are talking to a president. So basically, these two picture implies definition about language register. So let's proceed and let's go into details about this language register. So basically, there are three language registers that have been identified as the most common. So we have formal, informal, and the neutral. Perhaps to you guys who are watching right now, you are familiar with these three words or maybe two of these words, the formal and informal one, because you already encountered these words during your English subjects before. So we will discuss it one by one. So let's have first the formal. So formal language register means that it is the style of writing or style of speaking in which used for unfamiliar audience or readers. Or we could say that you are using the formal language register for your superiors in an office or in any context. In short, we could say formal language means you are talking or you are writing formally to a particular person that there is no intimate relationship. So if we will go back to the pictures, this one is what we consider the formal language register. Why? Because if we could notice, and if we could remember the one that we've created earlier, the scenario that we've created earlier, we assume that one of these men is the president and the other one is maybe somehow a stranger, a secretary, or that has no relationship to the president. Therefore, as being mentioned by the slide, you are using formal language register for unfamiliar audience. Unfamiliar means not literally you are not familiar. The unfamiliar term there is using the relationship. There is no relationship towards the audience. Okay? While the other one is the informal. So it will explain the formal one. So because if we say formal, there is no relationship. Therefore, you need to use the formal language. The other way around, if you have casual or intimate relationship, that's the time that you are going to use the informal language register. So if we could notice on the picture, what's up? It's awesome that you came to visit. The term what's up, it's an informal term. So they used what's up because they have an intimate relationship towards each other because they are brothers. So maybe somehow these informal language register are being used from time to time, especially that we are surrounded with familiar people. So perhaps we are using informal language from time to time rather than the formal one. So now let's proceed to the neutral. Neutral, it is the more objective, impersonal, and factual type of writing or speaking. In short, if we say neutral, the other way around, either way, formal or informal. But the focus of it is on the factual information. I will discuss it I will discuss it further as we go along with this video. So again, we have to remember there are 3 language registers that have been identified: the formal, informal, and the neutral language register. So now let's discuss the formal language register. As being mentioned, um, formal register has this so-called number of rules govern in this register. So there are, as per record, there are 9 rules that govern in the use of formal language registers. So we'll discuss it one by one. So let's first discuss the first rule. Rule number 1, use the third person. Very common. In pronoun, we have first, second, and third person. Now, specifically, if we will talk about formal language register, we need to use the third person. Third person, those are the he, she, we, them. Okay? So those are the third person pronoun. So we need to be familiar on it. And the second one is avoid contractions. So, avoid contraction means wag mong paliitin yung mga bagay na hindi dapat. Like for example, the word shouldn't. Shouldn't is contraction. The real word of it, the real word of it is should not. So if we will talk about formal language register, we should not contract any words. In short, wag nating paliitin. Contraction means the process of becoming smaller. So instead of saying shouldn't, couldn't, can't, you have to spell it out. Say should not, could not, cannot, will not. So you have to spell it out. You have to avoid contractions or the process of becoming smaller. The third one, spell out numbers below 100. So very common and self-explanatory that 1 to 99, you have to spell it out in words. But beyond 100, you can use the numeric. Okay, rule number 4, use formal words rather than slang and cliches. So since we are talking about formal language register, we need to put in mind the formal words. So perhaps you would say, what are these slangs? What are these cliches? So slang refers to the informal use of language. For example, you would say, cool. Cool is an informal word. So if you are situated in a formal conversation, instead of saying cool, you would say very good. Okay? So again, there are words that we need to be familiar with, especially in terms of the usage. Okay? So like for example, the one earlier that we've used, the what's up. So it's instead of saying what's up, you would say, how are you? How are you doing today? That's the formal way of saying what's up. Okay? And the fifth one, acronyms can be used, but you have to spell it out first. So example of it is this one. Okay? This should be written like this. Let me just check. It should be written like this. Okay. This one. So non-government organization. Always remember, in formal language register, before using the acronym, you can use acronym, but before using it, you have to spell the word out first, or you have to spell it out first. So example given, we have non-government unit or non-government organization, and the acronym is being situated inside the parentheses. So you have to remember that. So you have to use you can use the acronym, but make it sure you have to spell it out first, then put the acronym in the parentheses. So thereafter, you may use the acronym in the other parts of your sentence. I hope these things is clear. So let's proceed to rule number 6. Since we're talking about formal language register, we need also to remember this one. Use complete sentences. And this is very true and standard in formal language. So in formal language, we need to be you need to utilize the complete sentences, and we need to avoid the phrases and clauses. And rule number 6 has something to do with rule number 7. So if it's complete sentence, therefore it should be in an active voice. Okay? So I will not go into details, or I will not go into further details about this active and passive voice of sentences, because you already encountered this during your previous English subjects. So just remember, a passive sentence has the word by. So if there is the word by, you should delete that, or you can transform it into the active form. Okay? And rule number 8, simple sentence rather than compound sentence. Now, if we say compound sentence, it has two independent clauses. In short, there are two sentences in one sentence. So to avoid misconception, or to make your statement clearer or easily to understand, we need to use simple sentences, like one sentence only. That's enough, okay? To make your speech or write up shorter and easier to understand. And the last one is the use of conjunction. This is very important, okay? Use of conjunction to indicate transition, especially to you guys who are watching right now. You are surrounded with essays. You are surrounded with writings. So for you to have a very good write-up, a very good articles, we need to use or utilize conjunctions. So perhaps you are familiar with these conjunctions. So these conjunctions, in our thinking, in our previous knowledge, we have two: the coordinating conjunction and the subordinating conjunction. But this time we will add another one, and that is correlative conjunction. So coordinating conjunction, basically it is the fanboys, the for and, neither, but, or, yes, and so. The rest are the subordinating conjunction. But there is what we call correlative conjunction. Those are conjunctions that you are trying to compare one particular thing to another. So example of it is not only dot, 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 but also neither dot, 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 nor, either dot, 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 or, though dot, 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 yet. So example of it is neither of the man nor the woman. So you're trying to compare one thing to another thing. So that's correlative. You are trying to correlate the two things with each other. So speaking of conjunctions, we have different classification of conjunctions aside from the types that we had discussed. So we have addition, summary, place, example, comparison, time, and I will not go into details because you already have. Or if you really wanted to learn more about this conjunction or any types of English grammar, you can go to the link www.englishstudyhere.com. There's a lot of lessons that you can read on that website. So always remember, use conjunction to indicate transitions or imply continuity or cause and effect relationship in the ideas of your sentences. Conjunctions such as however, nevertheless, similarly, and on the other hand, could help relate or show contrast in the ideas in your sentences. So you have to remember that. So let's do recap. There are 9 rules govern in the formal language register. We have rule number 1, use of third person. Rule number 2, avoid contractions. Rule number 3, spell out numbers below 100. Use formal words rather than slang and cliches. That's for rule number 4. Acronyms can be used, but you have to spell it out first. Rule number 5. And for rule number 6, use complete sentences in your write-up or speech. And for rule number 7, you have to use active voice rather than the passive sentences. Rule number 8, simple sentences rather than compound sentences. And the last rule, rule number 9, use conjunctions to indicate transition. So you have to remember that. Okay? So let's proceed to the informal. But before discussing the informal, as being mentioned, those are the formal rules govern in the formal language. In informal writing, there is no rule. Okay? Wala pong rules sa informal. You can use whatever you want. Okay? Because in informal, as being mentioned, you have intimate relationship. So in informal language register, you are using informal or friendly use of words. So this is the type of writing wherein you adopt short messaging system like text message, friendly letter, and the very common, the diary. And perhaps one of you who are watching right now is using diary up until today. You're writing diaries just for personal thoughts, okay? So informal writing is the opposite formal letters, does not require formal or strict rules to follow. So it's up to you how are you going to write if we say informal. While on the other hand, the neutral language register. So the neutral language register is neither formal nor informal. So wala kang pagpipilian. This is applicable for non-emotional and factual themes. Like for example, articles, technical reports, magazine reviews, news. So those are the neutral language register that we are very common. Okay, we are familiar with. So that's the end for the part 1. And the next video will discuss the varieties of language.